Hello, hello. Welcome to Journey to SEA 2025. Thank you for joining me this morning. My name is Shellyan Edwards Barron, and I'm a creative writing specialist here to talk to you about reports, narratives, and comprehension. I know some of you might be thinking, how does comprehension come into it? But when you think about it, comprehension is like the other side of writing, because when you write the reports and the narratives, somebody is reading it. And really and truly, like the passage section of the SEA exam, you can get fiction or nonfiction, which is pretty much a narrative or a report when you break it down to the details. So I hope you're hearing me clearly because it's raining heavily outside. Lots of noise, but hoping the mic is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And for those of you who are new to the episodes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm happy that you're taking your time out. And just to give you a little bit more about myself, when I said I'm a creative writing specialist, it's because I take writing from multiple different perspectives, and I believe in something called multisensory learning applied to the creative writing classroom. We're accustomed to this with math and science, where we have the manipulatives and all these things that children do in the classroom. But when it comes to writing, somehow we kind of just write and read some more and write some more. But there's lots of fun ways that we could learn about writing and integrate the sciences and the engineering and lots of different things in learning about writing. So that's what I'm all about. And I try to make learning about writing as much fun as possible because research has shown that when students are engaged and they're enjoying what they're doing, they're more likely to A, want to do it again, and B, learn from it. So that's where we're at. And today's session would probably be, I know we began a few minutes into the time, but it would probably be a little bit shorter than usual because I'm just going to be touching on a couple of things and guiding you to where you will get resources. Um, I'm dealing with some health issues and speaking a lot right now is I'm already starting to feel it in my throat. So let me get to it as quickly as possible so you can get as much from this session as possible and be able to, figure out and work on what it is you need to work on this week to help your child or your students with the reports, narratives, and comprehension. So let's see, what are we working on today specifically? I'm going to share my screen. Where are we? Yep, yep. Still figuring out the sharing screen thing. I don't know. One of these days I'll get it. I'll get it. I promise. Okay, there we go. So we are doing analyzing prompts, developing rising action, and focusing a little bit on the questions for fiction. Now, if you've been following the series, you would know that one of the things that I've shared before is that each type of text that students have to encounter or might encounter during the comprehension section of the SEA exam, each text has unique questions. So there are general questions that would cover things like details from whatever it is or vocabulary. So those are like general questions. But then near the end of the list of questions, there are going to be unique questions to each type of passage. So not just like say this passage, so I'm asking you this question. No, that's not what I mean. I mean there are certain types of questions. So if you'd followed the sections on nonfiction, you'd know that for nonfiction, we focus a lot on main ideas and that type of thing. So that's what we're working on today. We have one glitch so far. I don't know what it is with the rain every time. So I'm hoping that you're hearing. If I get bumped out for a second, just let me know. for whatever reason, it will just hold for me. Could I might need to switch in order for us not to get it happened last week and it's happening again with me getting bumped out. So let me see if I could adjust so that I won't get bumped out. I hope it doesn't disconnect while I'm trying to do this. All right. So, okay. Let's see. Are we going? Are we good? Yeah, please don't bump me out. Please don't bump me out. I'm switching internet providers because I think the other one is going to work out well. All right, so hopefully I won't get bumped out of this session. Okay, so I'm going to stop share this and share something else as we're getting into we're dealing with oh, I almost forgot. It's a good thing I clicked this before we go. My reminders for this week. Um it's as much as I mean all of these are like total reminders from me, but I'm sharing them because I feel like they can help somebody. Balance is needed. And when I say balance, I mean like I know going into SEA, we sort of push, the schoolwork and focus on all these, we have assignments and teachers are giving tons and tons of homework and all these things. But school and work are only one part of who we are as human beings. And right now, what I'm feeling, me personally, I am very task oriented. So I focus a lot on doing things. And sometimes I don't sleep well and I don't eat as well as I'm supposed to. And then my body feels it. So the thing about it, healthy body, healthy mind. You probably have heard that before. That is absolutely true. It's very difficult to have focus and concentrate when you're dealing with sleep deprivation or you haven't had enough water or you haven't had enough nutrition. And so that there really needs to be that balance and even physical exercise. I mean, and there's research for all of these things, right? If you look it up, hydration is like absolute key. We take it for granted, and hydration means water, not other flavored liquids. It means water. I remember I was interviewing what's his name? Keston Walkins from Allegory. And if you haven't seen that interview, you can check my YouTube channel. The interviews there, just type in, you could search up interviews and then go through. There are about 5 or 6 interviews there. When I'm finished with this, I'll put a link to it in the comments. But one of the number one things, and he's a neuroscientist. He studies how the brain works and focus on concentration and all those things. And what he said when I asked him, how do we improve and how do we maintain? And he mentioned hydration as like one of the number one things because I mean, if you think about it, our bodies are, I can't remember the statistic, but we need water to function in every aspect of who we are. So hydration is critical. Nutrition, because we need to feed our brain so that it could function properly and our bodies. Movement, because movement allows for flow and brings in a lot of energy. And then rest in all different forms, relaxing the mind, relaxing the body, emotional support, all those things come into play. And so I am feeling the brunt of not having my balance right now. So, hence the reason that's like number one for me to tell you, hey, get that balance and teach your kids about the balance because you don't want them to grow up into adults who are workaholics and, relationships and the rest of their lives are suffering. So, in the midst of everything, try to work it out, get in some playtime, get in some rest time, get in some fun and interaction as well. And the second thing is that it's okay to take a step back sometimes. I had some experiences with a couple of my students this week, and sometimes because of all the stuff that they have to do, they get overwhelmed. And so it's a good idea, even as an instructor, to give them that downtime. And so that's why I have all these games and different things. And so it happened like last week and this week because this is about midterm, and some of my students are ill because they've been really pushing and pushing it. And so we're all kind of feeling the impact of different things. And so sometimes it's okay to step back, and while we want to keep going forward, do some basic stuff that's a little bit easier, but still in line with studying. So it's not always about going forward. Sometimes we need to go around right where we are in order to really reinforce things. And that reinforcement can also be a little bit of a downtime. And so it's okay to step back from time to time. And so that's one of the reasons, if you don't already have a copy of the schedules for all the lives that I'm doing here, me when it's cycling like that, you should get a copy because I do have schedules for all the lives that I'm doing here. Me when it's cycling like that. The internet is being fun with us today again, and I thought I had solved that problem. Let's see. Maybe I could. I don't even know how to do this. Okay. All right. So let's hope it's not too much of an issue. But so this episode I might have to edit it and put it back up because of all these interruptions. But I was saying it's okay to step back, and this is one of the reasons why in our schedule, because remember I started in April with these lives, the schedule goes according to a cycle. It's a 3 cycle process. So we go through the basics, and then we come back right around and we start at the beginning again, but this time applying it to some more information within the writing and the comprehension. And then by the end of this term, we would be at the end of cycle 2. And then in January, we're going to begin again with cycle 3 with more of a drill approach where we are getting into more details and practice. And so it's a cycle so that you can go forward and back, forward and back. Reinforcement is kind of built in. And sometimes, even within that, we do need to take a step back and pause. So, monitoring the situation as you study and review with your child or students, make sure you pay attention to their frustration levels so that you could know when it's time to push a little more and when it's time to ease off a little bit. And then finally, answer all questions as thoroughly as you can. So, it's not enough just to say yes or no when it comes to questions about the writing or the comprehension. You want to go into details. And so, this is why when I do the comprehension exercises with my own students, we go into a lot of details and lots of explanations. When I do comprehension worksheets, for those of you who've purchased the worksheets, you would see that I don't just give the answers, I also give an explanation of how the answers were derived. And so it is very important to make sure students are clear on the answers that you're giving. And even if a student asks a question that you think they should know, they're asking the question either to reinforce what they already know or because they've forgotten it. They're asking a question for a reason. And so pay attention to what the reason is they're asking the question and answer the question as thoroughly as possible. It can get a little bit frustrating when students are asking the same questions over and over, but it probably means maybe some more reinforcement is needed. It may be that enough practice is not being done. It may also be that students might need um, additional strategies to help them remember. For example, with the students when we were doing character development and character description, many of them were forgetting different things with the um, character descriptions in particular, like the physical descriptions. So I worked out an acronym to help them memorize it, and as they're going through their writing process, I showed them how to apply the acronym. So it's not enough just to know it, remember, we have to apply it as well. So there's the acronym, and then there's the application of the acronym. How do I use this acronym to help me remember? And so we went through that process. So that's kind of like a stepping back, because these are things that they kind of know, but they don't know exactly how to apply it. And then making sure that I answered the questions thoroughly so that they can um, get that support. Because the idea is we're supporting our children and our students, right? And so giving them quick, short answers isn't always going to be the way to go. We really do need to get into the um, answers, sometimes really thorough, complete answers, that sometimes we're answering questions that they didn't quite ask because we know where it's headed. All right. And so that's it for reminders and so on. And now for the analyzing prompts. So I'm going to stop share this and go to the, let's see, we're going to go to a screen from the 5 reports series. If you don't already have a copy of that, it's a good idea to get it. Um, that's the digital series that I have on um, writing reports. I call it the 5 reports challenge, writing challenge. And there are different, you have report samples and lots of different things in this. And one of the booklets focuses on um, analyzing prompts and going into details about what each section of a prompt deals with. Because I'll tell you this, a well written report that isn't related to the prompt cannot score well, because part of the report writing is looking at how students respond to a prompt. And if they misinterpret the prompt, then there's a huge issue there. And so it, even if the report is well written, if it's not focused on the topics that should be focused on, if it deals with things that are slightly different, we're losing marks there as well. And so being able to analyze the prompts quickly and do that quick planning is something that students really need to be able to do. And so there's an entire booklet on how to analyze prompts within that 5 reports series. For those of you who have it, this is booklet number 7. And so you want to go to booklet number 7 this week and review, discuss, um, analyze prompts. And it's a serious issue, because I think in 20, I believe it's the first time the reports were done in 2019, there was a report that asked for a prompt that asked students to write about a function on a computation. And because students weren't familiar with analyzing prompts, many of them saw the word competition and wrote about the competition. But the issue is that the report was asking about the function. Now, if they didn't know what the word function meant and they saw competition and that's a word they knew, then they would have been responding to something other than what the prompt was actually asking for. And so many students lost marks because of that. And so sometimes you would see a prompt that has like a two-part thing where it talks about a field trip, but then the focus isn't on the field trip, the focus is on an injury that happened during the field trip. And so things like that really need to be addressed to make sure students are understanding and reviewing their prompts effectively. And so I'll show you just this one page where it kind of outlines the different sections of the prompt. And so there are three sections to the prompt. We have the sentence one, which I call the context. And sometimes you might have a context that has two or more um, sentences. Usually it's one, but sometimes you can get it into two depending on how descriptive they want to give, want to be for the details. You can get information like one or two sentences. So I say sentence one just for the sake of this point here, this prompt, but it can also have two sentences for that context section. And that context section pretty much gives you the context. It's like that's the foundation. This is what is happening. And that's what that answers. And then you have sentence two, which would be section two, um, that is the direction on what it is you're supposed to be writing about. And so this is write a report to about. So it tells you who you're writing to and what you're writing about. Are you writing about the incident? Are you writing about um, a function? Are you writing about an injury? What exactly are you writing about? And who is your audience? Are you writing to the principal, to the teacher, to whomever is identified? You're told who and what in that section. And then you have the bullet points, which would be this section, um, which includes some reminders and some points of focus. And so that outlines the details that you're supposed to include. And so this particular booklet goes into detail on each of these sections and what more you need to understand. So, for example, there are a few things with the bullet points you might need to remember, a few things with the context you might need to remember. There are also some guides in terms of if it's one of those prompts that the student has to include themselves. I know lots of people say, well, teachers included, you cannot use pronouns. That's not true. They also say you cannot include yourself or use first person pronouns. That's also not true. Get yourself a copy of the frequently asked questions of report writing that the Ministry of Education issued in 2022 and review those. There are points in there that explain certain things. Now, in the prompt, most prompts are written in a fairly general way that you can include yourself or not. And by default, you want to not include yourself so that it could be as objective as possible. However, there are some prompts that are phrased in certain ways that you are most definitely involved. And if you respond to a prompt like that, excluding yourself, then you're not responding to the prompt effectively. And so the booklet goes into a whole lot more details on that. But for what I want to share with you today is there are sections to the prompt and make sure you understand what's happening at each section and what information each section is going to give you, because this is how you are guided in terms of how you respond to the prompt. All right. And again, for those of you who have the series, the 5 reports challenge, it is booklet number 7. So that is what you are focusing on this week. So I can stop share. So what you're going to be doing really is um, looking at prompts, having a go at analyzing prompts, and in that 5 report series, you get roughly about, let's say, 18. You have 18 different prompts. If you want additional prompts to work with because you've already been working with those, I do also have the report planning series, and that one has 25 prompts. So you have access to lots of different prompts that you could use to um, practice analyzing prompts and going into the details. All right. And so that is it for the reports. And just by way of a transition, I want to just put up the billboard so it'll be easy for my assistant when she's doing the editing. Yeah. Okay. So when we get to, we're going to move on to the narratives now. And for narratives this week, we're talking about developing rising action. Now, developing rising action is where the excitement gets more intense before it gets better. And so we want to build the drama. And we do need to pay attention to the context of whatever the story is. But overall, the point is that there's supposed to be what I call an escalation of conflict. And in order for readers to feel like there's an escalation of conflict, three things need to happen. The first is that um, you need to have three or more. I average three because of the length of the story. Three levels of conflict. So your level one conflict is easy to solve. Your level two conflict takes a little bit more action and effort. Your level three conflict is where you feel like if it's hopeless until you get the intervention and then you're able to solve it. So there needs to be three levels of conflict. The main thing with the levels of conflict is that readers need to know where the conflict is coming from. So it shouldn't just kind of pop out of nowhere randomly. In order for the story to make sense, it has to be connected. Secondly, with the conflict, the characters need to react, and they need to react emotionally to what's going on. And so a lot of times students would, they'd say the conflict and then the character jumps into action and they're doing things. That's interesting, that's good, but it's incomplete because what really drives that rising action is when the readers feel the emotions of the character, the main character. So something major could be happening and they're dealing with it, but if they don't feel any kind of way, then it's not going to feel like if the conflict has escalated. It'll just be one other something that the character has to deal with, and the character is dealing with it and they're moving on with their lives. But there's no emotional connection or no emotional response. And if there is none, then readers would be like, okay, yeah, they're dealing with it. They're not going to feel like, oh no, this is so dramatic. Look, they're feeling this. You need to get that kind of response. So the number one thing with the developing rising action, you need different levels of conflict. The second thing is that the different levels of conflict must be accompanied by increasing emotional responses. And then the final thing with the development of the conflict is that you want to make sure that however the conflict develops, it meets to a point where the character has to get support to solve it. So the conflict really needs to kind of get out of hand, but because you're the writer, you're it's not out of hand for you because you're controlling everything, but it really kind of needs to get out of hand for the main character. And when that happens, then the information to the reader is that, oh, he's in trouble now, and then you bring the help and you solve the problem. And so that's how you build the rising action. So when we talk about a rising action, remember it's supposed to get more intense, it's supposed to develop, it's supposed to rise. That is where you want to get the three levels of conflict. You want to make sure readers know where the conflict is coming from at each level. There's an emotional reaction from the main character, and it gets to the point where it's out of hand for the main character, and then you go about solving it after you get the help, which would be the intervention and the what you call it, the climax, right? And so rising action is all about things getting more intense. And since it just popped into my head, I do a couple experiments dealing with this to show students how these things work. And I have one of them that I do, and I do this in all my demonstrations because I think it's such a cool experiment and it's so simple to do. Um, I'm going to show you a clip of it. I videotaped myself doing it, and so let me just I can show you. I'm going to skip forward. All right, so let me share screen so you can see what I'm talking about. And okay, no, not that window. Yeah, it's called the dancing popcorn experiment, right? And it's just a fun experiment that you could do at home, very simple materials. And I sort of adjusted it and put it in a format that the students can learn from. And so it's a process. I do this with my students to help them understand how that conflict works. Um, okay, I don't think you're seeing my screen. Why? Maybe if I skip forward. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's try again. So I'm seeing it's running below, but you're not seeing my screen. Oh yeah, today is one of those days, and I almost didn't come online today. I almost sent a message to say, "Hey, I'm not up to this today." But all right, so let's try again. Share, play. Hmm. Okay, so that is not working. Let me try another player. But the idea is so the dancing popcorn, you can look it up online. The dancing popcorn experiment, um, it uses popcorn and club soda to show like the interaction. When you put the club soda into a cup with popcorn, they kind of, move around and bubble up, and it aha, see, yep, I got it. All right, so let me just skip forward to the exciting bits. Right, this is what happens with the popcorn when you put the club soda in it. But of course, you see, I have three glasses, and not all of them have club soda in them only. The first one is just water, the middle one is a club soda, the third one is where I put the club soda and the water. So this kind of demonstrates how the plot works together. And so students get to see the excitement of the popcorn moving. And then there's a whole explanation that goes with that in terms of the rising action and the kind of conflict that has to go into that rising action. And so this is one of the ways that I implement that multisensory learning because of course the students are doing things. I'm not just telling them, they're actively doing things. And I do this online with students, because of course, while I have the video, sometimes I do it live with them. And parents, simple things: water, popcorn, club soda, three clear. I'm using glasses here, but you could use clear plastic cups, and that's it. And I guess, a little ways from the device. But we're using multisensory learning here to get students engaged. And so they do the thing themselves. And while they're doing it, I'm explaining what it means to writing. And so after we do the experiment, when we're writing, I would tell them, hey, but your popcorn isn't moving. I mean, just you just poured water on this. Where's the conflict? Where's the this? Where's the that? And they have something tangible and concrete to hold on to that you could work with afterward. And that's the beauty of using the multisensory learning in the writing. And so so we have this one. What we do is, after we put the club soda, let me back up, right? So we have the club soda. We're going to add, this is where the intervention comes in, all right? Yeah. And that's where the intervention comes in to bring it around to climax and all of that. So now that experiment, I have that as part of I have a package with a poster of the 12-point plot with flashcards that you could use to interact with the students with that experiment video, some worksheets, and a couple different things to really help students get the grasp of rising action and what it is to really build a story like that. And so that's the beauty of using, we have all these experiments and interaction. Another one I use to develop conflict is called elephant toothpaste. I don't have a video of that one to show you, but you get the idea of how you can incorporate the multisensory learning into it. And even at this point, remember, you don't want students to think that writing is this tedious, boring thing and they have to just keep dragging ideas out of themselves. You want to make it interactive and fun. And even at this point in Standard 5, where they should know at least the basics of all of these things, showing them visually and having them see the movement and the interaction and all the different senses coming into play, you have a really solid base for building their knowledge and their understanding. And so with that, this week, what you'd be working on with the um, creative writing with the narratives, what you really want to be doing is um, having the student plot out their stories. You could pause in all the writing, have them practice with the plot again, and you're paying specific attention to the rising action. So you give them a prompt and you say, okay, where do the problems begin? What's the next step? How do you make this worse? And then how do you make that even worse before it gets better? And so I give my students worksheets where I give them prompts, and then there's a worksheet where they're writing certain things. Um, if you're interested in getting that, I haven't made that available to the public yet, but if you're interested in getting that, message me. um, but it's really a good way to see how the student is thinking with the problems. For example, I did this with one of my standard four students, and this is something that I really drill into the standard fours, right? I did this with one of my standard four students, and in going through it, I realized that in his mind, he gives the problem and then the solution happens almost immediately. And so there isn't a lot of emotional responses. And then he goes from, like, say, 0 to 100 in like that. So we have like the three levels of conflict. They happen bam, 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 and then we solve it without really exploring each level. And that's where you get your descriptions and the emotions and all those other things coming in. So with him, what I'm doing is focusing on slowing down his thinking by using the worksheet slowing down his thinking so that he could get that step by step and then be able to describe what's going on at each step to develop the story effectively. And so it's a process, but he's in standard 4, so he has the time to really master it. And so that's why I generally say, when if your children are having struggles with creative writing, standard 3 is the place to begin, because you want to work on descriptive writing first, and then you do the format with the plot, so that by the time they get standard 5, they're really practicing, not now learning things. But if it is that you're already in standard 5, which many of you might be, and the student doesn't have all these foundation things, there is a step by step process that they can follow. And the step by step process is called the 12-point plot development. And understanding that is going to solve a lot of their problems, not only for organization, but for content and description and everything. Because at each step in the process, there are certain skills and strategies that need to be expressed. And the resources that I have for that, well, I have one specifically for the 12 point, which is the you get the worksheets and the video that I showed you, you get the whole thing with explanation. I don't know if you saw the little bubble with me in the corner, because I do give an explanation throughout. There's also the poster and flashcards and some ideas on how to use those things, because really plot is a big deal, and it's a bigger deal than many people realize with stories. Because if you plot effectively, you can actually peg descriptions to certain aspect of the plot, and therefore spread things out the way a story is supposed to be spread. And so I remember there was a conversation in SEA Peacefield. Somebody was saying that, it's a lot of people think that if you give students a step by step, it'll kind of crush their creativity. Well, the 12-point step by step actually brings out their creativity, because it tells them what they can do at each section, and then they have to brainstorm and come up with ideas to fit each section, and that allows them to see things in a more critical and creative way. And so it's definitely something that you should consider. I have a series just like the report series that I spoke about. um that's the 7 stories narrative writing challenge. You get sample stories, you get the plot worksheet, you get the plot development, little diagram of it, and some explanations, and so that you can see how things work, plus 21 different prompts that you could work with to try and practice and brainstorm how to plot, because that's really going to help you to see the development and get students thinking along the lines of what kinds of stories they want to write and all those things. So it's worth going into the that situation. All right, so for this week, you're plotting, focusing specifically on the rising action, which starts you at complication, what's the first problem, and takes you to climax, because climax is where you solve, but you're looking at how the conflict develops, the emotional responses that go along with the different levels of the conflict, and how the character eventually gets help and resolves the matter. Right? So that is it for the narratives. So we've covered reports and narratives, and what we're going to be dealing with now is the comprehension. So let me just put up the billboard so that we can have that um, separation. I think it's my sharing screen that's giving a lot of problems. Maybe when I share screen, is creating an issue. But all right, so we're looking at the fiction questions. Ooh, there's an S missing. Um, yeah, so we're looking at fiction questions and what is unique about fiction questions. And so the idea is that think about what makes a story unique. What makes a story different from an article? There are 3 things, and these are where your fiction questions will be unique. and different from the passage if it was a nonfiction passage. So, what are these three things? The three things that make a fiction unique is one, we have characters. So, in nonfiction, you might have a participant doing something, but we generally talk about people, different types of people, and what a group might do, and so on. But in a fiction, you have a main character, and chances are usually you might have a villain or some kind of, like a bad guy. So you have good guys and bad guys. So that's one. You have characters. The second thing is that you have a problem that escalates. We were just talking about rising action. So usually you will have a problem that gets worse, and which is very different from nonfiction where you present a problem and then you give solutions. This isn't like that. The problem actually escalates, and then you have the emotional responses that the characters would have. And in those emotional responses, we have the descriptions of the setting and all these other kinds of things. So these are where the fiction differs from nonfiction and other types of passages. And because you have characters, because you have a problem that escalates, and because you have those emotional and other responses where you have lots of descriptions, you are going to get questions about these things. And so if you study the past papers where there are fiction comprehension, and I think these are, let me see if I remember, um, what years were fiction and what years were non-fiction. So I think 20 by categories, right? So 2021 was so 2019 is nonfiction, 2021 is nonfiction, and then 2022 nonfiction. So the other years, um 2020, 23, and 24 were fiction comprehension passages. So we have three fiction, three nonfiction that you could work with in the spread from 2019 to 2024. And so, and I don't generally advise going further back. Somebody messaged me this week to ask about answers to the ELA section of the exams and comprehension in particular before 2019, because I have a package from 2019 to 2024. Now I have 2018 and it is an SEA peace filled approach. If you go in there, just type in 2018 SEA, you should get the exam and the answers. It's there for free. I don't charge for that because beyond 2019, prior to 2019, the exam was a very different format. The way it's formatted now is the way it's going to be in 2025 when you see. So you're looking at like the 2023 and 2024, those would be the closest in terms of the comprehension, the closest to the format of the 2025. Now, if you're not sure about what that format is going to be for 2025 and beyond, you can actually check. The ministry has information on the objectives and how the exam would look like from 25 to 2028. All right, 4 years, 25, 26, 27, 28. And so they give you, a breakdown how many questions you'd get in each section and those kinds of things. On the ministry's website, Ministry of Education, Trinidad and Tobago, go to primary school resources, and then you would see in that the assessment framework for 25 to 28, and take a look at that. That'll give you the basic idea. So I would not advise going beyond 2019, and even 2019 is different, but 2018 is so different from the exam. If you want to use the passage and create your own questions that fit the current format, that's fine. But using it exactly as it is is not going to give the student the idea of what the exam is going to be like. The number of questions will be different. The format is actually different as well. So please really be careful going beyond that. But with the comprehension passage fiction, remember the questions that are unique to fiction would be the questions on character, questions on emotional responses from characters, how characters feel, how you as the reader feel about characters. So lots of questions on feelings, lots of questions on characters, and we want to talk about the plot and so on. So all the things that make a fiction passage unique, you are likely to get questions about those things, and therefore those are the unique questions for the fiction. So if you want to really understand how that is and to focus on answering those kinds of questions, there are two key things that you have to pay attention to. Characters is number one because you have to be able to identify characters. Who's the main character? What are they thinking? How do they feel about other characters? Make sure you can do that. And two, be able to express the personalities and attitudes and vocabulary around those things. That's important for understanding how to answer comprehension questions about characters. So, what's his character personality? How do you feel about this character? You have to be able to answer questions like that. So vocabulary that would help that. That's what you have to focus on as well. And so this is what I go through with my students when we do the fiction. Right now we're just finishing up nonfiction. We're getting to fiction next week. When we do fiction, this is what we do. We focus on the different questions, how to answer the questions. I make sure they have the right vocabulary and the terminologies to answer the questions quickly and completely. And so that's the kind of thing that you're paying attention to. So if you don't already have a copy, get a copy of the past papers. Past papers, I would say the furthest back to go is 2019. That's when the exam format began to change. Um, Go the furthest back will be 2019. Get a copy of those. You can get most of them on the Ministry of Education's website. I can put a link in the comments when I'm finished the live where you would get the 2019 to 2024 and study those questions. If you want to get the answers to see how to answer the questions with explanations, message me. I do have those. I'll put a link to it in the chat as well. So, and if you want unique comprehension questions to practice and to focus on the different types, I do have a package and pretty cheap in my opinion. It's just $50 and you get 8 comprehension passages with answers and again with explanations of how to answer the questions. And so you get two fiction, two nonfiction, two graphics, and two poems with explanations, plus a reminder of what each section has that is unique to help guide you. So that's pretty much the end of it. And just as a reminder of what we covered today, we looked at the right. So I am back. And I was just wrapping up too. Okay, so I'm back. Thank you for holding on for me. As I did that disclaimer at the beginning, or reminder, whatever you want to call it. I just had a feeling it was going to drop out today. Um, and there's something going on with my internet. And I'm trying to share screen, and even it's not allowing me to even show you anything. So I don't know if it's my computer or what, but thank goodness I was at the end and pretty much finished. I was just going to remind you about the what we covered today, analyzing report prompts, and you can get lots of details on that from the 5 reports challenge, booklet number 7. If you have the booklet, go through booklet number 7 this week. Developing rising action. If you want to focus on that, you could, that's for narratives. The 7 stories challenge has the 12-point worksheet and the diagram, but if your student or your child needs a lot more detailed, direct focus, you can get the flashcards and the poster and the explanations and worksheets as well. Um, but if you have the 7 stories challenge booklets, then it would be booklet number 1, which would be the introduction. And I think, yeah, it's just booklet number 1. Let me just double check that and I'll tell you which booklets to focus on this week. So booklet number 1 would be the introduction. You get prompts in all the other booklets. And number 11 is self-marking. So number 11 shows you how to edit and mark yourself. 10 and 11, so you could probably go through those as well, but the main one is booklet number 1 that gives you that step by step plus the worksheet for analyzing prompts and plotting the stories properly. So you can go through those booklets and get the support with that one. And for the comprehension, we looked at fiction questions and looking at what is unique about fiction questions, what areas you need to really develop and focus. And for that, if you don't already have a copy of my answer sheets with the 2019 to 2024, so that's 6 exams altogether, you can get a copy of those with the explanations and some unique comprehension, which would be 2 fiction, 2 nonfiction, 2 graphics, 2 poems. That package as well, again with the answers and with explanations so that you could see the unique questions and how to respond to those unique questions. All right, so thank you so much for your time today and for sticking around through all the glitches and me popping in and out of the live. I do appreciate it. For those of you who return every week, thank you so much. Please like, comment, so other people could see that yes, this is valuable content if it's been useful to you. Um, and also liking shows that it'll pop up for other people who are doing similar searches so that they can get the help that they need. The more people like, the more people comment, is the higher up it will rank, and then it'll be spread to more and more people. That's my agenda, to help as many people as possible. Okay, so thank you so much. So let's see how the exit is going to go now. I wonder if the video will play. We should hope. Right? Have a wonderful rest of the day today, and I'll see you next week. If you don't have the resources yet, check me out. Send me a WhatsApp 717-4993, or you can find me on Facebook, Wood Coach Youth, or SEA Peacefield Approach. Just search me up, Shelly Ann Edwards Barron on Facebook. Send me a message, and I'd see as best as I could help you. All right. So have a wonderful rest of the day today, and I'll see you next week. Take care.